الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sheikh Muhammad had asked me to say something to the brothers and sisters in between the two salats. Maybe it's because I talk too much, maybe it's because they need a little extra time in the kitchen. At any rate, I want to talk very quickly today about Tawalla and Tabarra. These two very important elements in Islam. We know that Tawalla, it means that we have to love those who love Allah, love Ahlul Bayt, those lovers and friends of Allah. We have to love them. That's Tawalla. Tabarra is that we have to disassociate and have enmity towards the enemies of Allah, enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. This concept is at the very center of the relationship between haqq and batil. There is absolutely no way that you can have Islam without Tawalla and Tabarra. We always make the joke where we say that we're not hippies. We're not only about love. Tawalla and love is very important in Islam. It is the very foundation of the relationship between human beings and Allah and human beings and each other. However, love has no meaning if there's no Tabarra. If there's no disassociation with evil, if there's no hatred of batil, these two cannot exist together in the same world. Either you love haqq and hate batil, or you love batil, and thus you would hate haqq. One of the things that led to the collapse of the revolution of Hazrat al-Muslim ibn Aqil in Kufa, because we have to begin viewing these things as separate. We often look at the movement of Hazrat al-Muslim ibn Aqil in the same way that we're looking at the movement of Karbala and Imam Hussain. There are different objectives. There's a different plan at work in Kufa than there is at Karbala. And the reason that Kufa collapses is because people loved Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, but they didn't hate the enemies of Ahlul Bayt.
Subhanallah.
They loved Ahlul Bayt. Ahlul Kufa, it's not like they hated Ahlul Bayt, they had a problem with Imam Hussain. No, they loved Ahlul Bayt. But what caused them to fail in their revolution was that they didn't hate Muawiyah and Yazid, Muhammad Asad and these people. They didn't hate them. But they loved Ahlul Bayt. They didn't hate the enemy. If you don't have Tawalla and Tabarra, then we have problems in Islam. It's very important from this aspect also who we identify ourselves with. All of us, every one of us, identify ourselves. We choose an identity for ourselves, and this is a completely natural human experience that as we grow and learn more about ourselves and the world around us, we choose for ourselves an identity, we define ourselves. Tawalla and Tabarra is there for us to remind us as to who we should identify ourselves with and who we should disassociate ourselves from. This issue of identity is a very important issue, especially in North America, where identity has been robbed from each and every one of us to varying degrees. Because one of the systems of oppression, one of the systems by which they keep control over the people is by keeping the people ignorant. And not just ignorant about news affairs, but ignorant about themselves also. Their origin, their identity, who they are. And they try to control who you identify yourselves with and who you disassociate yourself from. This is something that we have to realize for ourselves. This is something that we have to recognize. Excellent example of this. Who are those Ummahatul Mu'mineen? Who are those mothers of the believers? And even Shias, when you come and you tell them, who is the mother of the believers? They might say Aisha and Hafsa. They'll come and they'll say Maryam Qibtiyya, Salma. And from one aspect, they're absolutely right. Prophet himself said that his wives are the mothers of this nation in the same way that he's the father of this nation. But we have to realize something also when we say this ummahat, these mothers of the believers. Who you associate yourself with, who you identify yourself with, who is your mother, has a lot to say about who you are. And who you choose to be your mother has a lot to do with who you end up becoming. And we're not saying that there's anything wrong with calling your wives of the Prophet mother of the world. Maryam Qibtiyah, you have your place. You loved your husband. You cared for your husband. You fulfilled your wazifah, and your husband also loved you. Salma, Prophet said, Anti bi khayr. You have a very good position. Your position is strong. Aisha and Hafsa, your husband loved you and cared for you and respected you. They definitely have their position. But who we choose to be the mother of the believers is vitally important. Who we identify ourselves with, who we choose as our mother, this is important. And from this point of view, when you hear tears like last night, they come forward, they come forward and say, Hazrat Zahra alayha salam is the mother of this nation. When we come forward and we say that Hazrat Fatima is Ummul Mu'mineen. From what point of view? Because Iman would not have been saved, would not have been preserved, would not have been delivered to this generation if it didn't come through Fatima. Iman would have been lost. Iman would have been forgotten. All the intrigues of these mothers of the faithful would have wrecked Iman so many years ago. The fact that Iman is entrusted to Ahl Bayt alayhi salam, and chief amongst them, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, Fatima Zahra, is the reason that we have Iman, Islam, Deen today. If it had put in anyone else's hands, it would have died at the Battle of Tabarra. It could have been destroyed at the funeral of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. It could have been wrecked when Prophet's food was poisoned. But luckily, Deen, Iman, Islam was entrusted to Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. And when we choose to identify ourselves with anyone, it should be based on the principles of Tawalla and Tabarra. Whom we love, Allah loves them and they love Allah. And whom we hate and disassociate ourselves from, they are those whom Allah hates and they hate Allah also. Salawat.